Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is a massive hit right now, and the game is all-encompassing from combat to alchemy to hunting to the impressively immersive storyline. KC2 has got something for everybody, but how does it hold up to those of us that don't have 6 to 8 hours a day, sometimes not even 2+ hours a day to play the game? Personally, I don't have a lot of free time, and like a lot of people with jobs or family, that 1 to 2 hours a day of gaming that you manage to scrape together, sometimes you don't, so it's very important when you do, is ever so important for your mental stability and just general well-being. So personally speaking, I don't want to play a game that's boring or grindy. Instead, you want to be immersed in something for just an hour to help you decompress and focus on something that you don't have to worry about afterwards. And that's what gaming is really for a lot of people nowadays. Those of us who grew up with gaming, with also limited responsibility at the time, now have to share that passion with real world responsibilities. We haven't got the time to complete every single side quest, to min-max our characters, or to find every secret and every chest in every single side quest. And what I've come to realise is that because of this, gaming is actually a lot more enjoyable, and I'm going to explain why. And if this isn't your experience and you do like to min-max characters and you like to complete games 100%, that's absolutely fine. I've got nothing wrong with that. I just don't have the time to do it myself. But maybe you should try this approach one day, because it changes your aspect and changes your outlook on gaming. Because what this approach does is actually allow you to relax and just go with the flow of the game. And that's what's incredible about Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It supports both playstyles. If you want to go out and you want to, complete every quest, complete every character, you can do that. But it also supports the player that may just want to experience the medieval world, and it doesn't punish either for doing so. And to be honest with you, I wasn't planning on making a video on Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 because actually I was using it as my time to just relax. But I was so impressed with it that I wanted to make some sort of video just to share my experience because it's been so incredible. And so just before we start, as you can see on screen, I'm here in the game. My HUD looks slightly different to yours. That's because I wasn't planning on recording this. This is actually a Steam recording, if you can believe it. It actually looks pretty good. I've had a couple of times where Steam has saved me because my recording software has died or corrupted or whatever, and the backup Steam recording has kept me in. But you'll see that actually this is a ultra wide recording because I'm actually playing on an ultra wide screen. That's how I play most games, but that's why I'm having to crop in a little bit, and so you're going to miss some of the things on screen. Now I've got that out of the way, I am going to give you my impressions on the start of my KCD2 journey, and frankly the eye-opening experience I've had for the past short 2 hours.
Maybe I boiled that chamomile longer than I should have.
I am going to try and avoid as many spoilers as possible. I am going to mention briefly where I am in the story, but I'm not going to tell you why or anything like that, so don't worry too much. I'm only literally been plonked down in the middle of this town, and that's where I'm starting. I've got no money, got nothing, so it's kind of the expected start anyway, and I don't think that's going to spoil it for anybody. So I've just been let out of the stocks. I don't think that's a spoiler because we know there are stocks in the game. And you're sort of left on your own at this point to go in any direction you want. Really, there are main quest lines, obviously, that you can complete, but you can complete them at your leisure. So you kind of been plonked down. You've got no horse, you've got no money at all, got a few bits of gear, got a sword, basic sword, a few bits of food, kind of keep you going for the first couple of days. The game doesn't tell you what to do, it just gives you advice. It doesn't really give you a check mark, go make this amount of money here, go pick up this sack, go and do this job, go and steal this, whatever. You're given the opportunity to play the character you want to play, and that's really interesting. So first thing I want to do personally in this game is to find some money, because I need some money to buy things, and I need to buy a horse because I'm bored of walking around everywhere. At least I'm sure that the game at some point is going to present you with a horse, because that makes sense to me. But in the meantime, I'm going to work my way up to get a horse anyway. So having the choice to do things your way makes the character you play unique to you, even though both of us, if we were both playing the game, will be playing the same storyline. And I think this is a great difference from other RPGs which let you kind of choose the character you want to play, like Skyrim for example. Nothing wrong with that at all, by the way, but Skyrim, you get to select the character you want to play, you get to select their traits, select their race and everything. And even though that can be a good thing, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is so rich in depth and texture. You don't actually need to do that to allow yourself to play in a different way. And that just actually, instead of being a negative thing, actually shows the game's strength. The pillars it's built on are incredibly capable of enveloping all different kinds of play styles. And what's even more amazing is that halfway through, if you decide you no longer want to be a horrible thief and instead want to be a chivalrous knight, you can do so. It will take time, like it would in the real world. So for my first playthrough, I decided to go a more honourable route, as I think most people do, and then the second playthrough they go through will be more of a thieving route, and then maybe a hardcore route at the end of that. I don't really know how to thieve at this point, so I decided not to, because I don't want to get branded or executed or in the stocks again, so I decided not to do that. Instead, I know how to make potions because of the prologue, and so I decided to do that. I decided to make some potions, chamomile potion, and sell it to the alchemist, and I thought that was just going to be a passing thing that I would do. There was no real enjoyment in that. I was just going to get this done as quickly as possible and move on. In Red Dead Redemption, for example, crafting and making things, whilst enjoyable, they weren't really that developed to allow me to engage with them as much as I'd want to. But if you told me a game could make a mortar and pestle interesting, I would have probably told you no. But Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has managed to do this in a strange way, with a lot of very, very clever interactions. First of all, sound design. And if you haven't used one of these before, it's like a stone or wooden mallet that you grind herbs or spices together to create a paste, breaking down different spices or different herbs. If you've used one of these things before, you can never really forget that sound. It's very, very distinctive. It's like two pieces of stone rubbing together, and it's almost jarring, the noise, but it's also very, very relaxing. And in the game, the noise this mortar and pestle make and I know this is very, very specific, it sounds just like the real thing, and because of this, your brain starts to remember the times that you've actually used this in real life. And when the game can make you connect with a sound and not just a visual, it actually makes the gameplay much more realistic between you and the character in the game. Then we have the recipe book, and you've got to concentrate on that and read the instructions and turn the sand timer to make sure you boil the base the correct temperature. You've got to grind the sage, use the bowl to combine your elements. You've got to use the bellows to stoke the fire and to allow your potion to brew as quickly as possible. It's amazing. The whole thing is like a well-oiled process. Even pouring out the liquid at the end is satisfying. And it doesn't take hours. It takes a few minutes maybe, but those few minutes are quite productive for you as a player, and you've got to make sure you get things on time and on right. And it's a little bit intense the first time round, but after a while you kind of get into a rhythm of things and it starts to become a lot more peaceful in a strange way. It's amazing just how well this whole area is designed. You don't get bored. I know that's weird, I'm only making a 2-ingredient potion. I'm sure I get bored after an hour, right? But because you're not there on a time limit, you don't have to stay for an hour. You can stay for a few minutes if you want. Between the sound of the bellows, the boiling of the cauldron, the clink of the handle, all these different tiny little sounds that kind of build this picture together in your mind. You know, even throwing in spice is a satisfaction in that. And you find yourself completely immersed. And I could actually quite easily find myself immersed in just playing a potion character and nothing else, and just selling it between different towns, and it'd be quite exciting. All these things you may find incredibly boring, and that's fine, and you know what, that's the point, isn't it? You don't have to do the potion brewing part of the game if you don't want to. And again, you may think this looks incredibly boring, and that's fine, but you know, after a long day of work, sometimes all you want to do is something a little bit mindless, right? And I'll take brewing concoctions on KCD2 over TikTok any day, right? Mindlessly scrolling, looking at things you'll never remember anyway. So let's get back to the playthrough. I got a bit stuck on the mortar and pestle there. Afterwards, I was comparing prices between the trader and the alchemist, kind of just figuring out that obviously the alchemist is the best to sell to because he specializes in potions. But whilst doing so, the trader tipped me off about a resource cart being tipped over further down the road, and after selling my potions for a very small profit, I figured this would be a good place, a good bet to start me out on. And the game will kind of slip in these little quips, these little mini quests that you can kind of go and do. But starting out, you do need a little bit of a boost. And I think this is what one of these quests is. And you have to be listening, right? You have to be listening to these people. It doesn't really give you a mark on the map immediately. I still have to search around a little bit. I'm thinking, yes, it's definitely north. up the road, and eventually a marker comes down the map, and I eventually manage to get there. You can't pull up the map as you're walking, you have to kind of walk, and I don't really want to look at the map too much to ruin the immersion for me, so I kind of keep walking and find this car. But what's great about this game is I could have gone anywhere, done anything, and the game would still continue. This is what makes an RPG so great. It's the replayability and the aspect of freedom. And the reason I believe that KCD2 has cracked this kind of code is not only because side quests are multi-layered in the side quests, right? But other random interactions, instead of being separate like they are in Red Dead Redemption, for the most part, there's obviously over exceptions, but instead of being separate, these interactions that are technically different and unrelated kind of mesh together a little bit. And when things mesh together naturally in a game, you find yourself incredibly immersed. I'm going to showcase this by just doing a very, very basic quest line, which is going to find this car. And we'll see how this transpires into a very, very different kind of situation that I don't personally try and set up, I don't personally try and achieve. And that's crazy to me, because there is something about natural occurrences building themselves together, meshing themselves together, that really bring out a game. Other games are so scripted, are so boring, are so flatline. I'm not talking about RDR2, but other games are so boring and go to this quest giver and that quest giver. It's just so linear and boring. And when a game can expand itself and those different parts, and some weird hand gestures here, but those different quests kind of mesh together and form a big quest that you aren't even supposed to be playing, right? It can really bring out the roleplay aspect, and really, instead of you having to do quests, you are doing the quest all the time. And that's really exciting to me. After that little rant there, well, let's just go through this storyline here. I decide to head towards the resource cart, and on the way, a few things happen. I meet a random messenger, have a quick dialogue with him. I pick a few herbs and flowers on the way, and I'm kind of just getting the lay of the land. And finally, I descend the hillside, and the path that leads me to a small river with reeds on either side. And I finally find this overturned cart, and we can see its wheel. And even though that some of the chests are in the water, there are some that are close to the shore and the bank, and therefore are in reach, and those are the ones that you're supposed to find. Inside you'll find an assortment of equipment. The most important chest is the chest containing very rare spice. When I was arriving at this car, I was expecting to have to fight somebody, or to find something a little bit more than just cabbages, right? And a few bits of spice, maybe even a new hat. Oh, I haven't got a hat yet, so I wanted a hat. And when you're in a situation like this, the feeling that you're underwhelmed by something is something, actually, if you think about it, is something the developers are trying to get across, right? You arrive at the car, it's been, tipped off by this guy, you find your cabbages, and you're thinking, well, is that it? Is that, am I really going to have to bring all these cabbages back, make cabbage soup, and sell that for like $1.50 or whatever it is, currency, groschen, I think it is. I wish my screen would stop. Are you okay? And when you're in a situation like this where you're feeling underwhelmed by a quest line, sometimes, if the game is good enough, and I'm assuming this game is, the developers know that you're going to feel underwhelmed. That's interesting, isn't it? So, first thought was, I have to get those chests out in the river. There must be a way to get to those. I can't swim out to them. There must be a boat somewhere. I don't know if you can go in boats in this game. I have absolutely no idea. So go up and down the riverbank, trying to find a boat. Can't find a boat, but I do find this fisherman guy who points me to a group of fish across the river, and I have no interest in getting those fish. I haven't got a fishing rod. But it makes me look at my map, and my map suggests to me I can see the crates in the water, and across the river I can also see there's a few crates across the other side, right next to this fishing point. Because if there's something in the middle of the lake, there's bound to be something on the other side, right? Because if you come from the other way, you find these crates, you see the cart across, you do exactly the same thing as I've just done. So I decided to go all the way around the riverbank to the other side to try and find out if there's any sort of barrel next to this fishing place where I can kind of see there's some weird bits on the map. I don't know if there's rocks in the river though. Could be just rocks, could be barrels, I have no idea. I make my way around the edge. I stumble across this camp where there's a few people, they offer me a drink. But I'm sort of on my way. I've kind of missed this opportunity to have a drink with these guys and find out some more information about them. As I'm continuing around this lake, there isn't much to see. I'm kind of thinking, this is probably a fool's errand. What am I doing? Let's just go back and make some potions, cook some cabbage soup. All right. And I stumbled across this campfire, this fisherman's campfire. You can see this fish on top, and right next to the fisherman's campfire is some barrels in the water. And this is what I mean by individual quests, technically side quests of side quests, connecting with one another. The fisherman had nothing to do with this cart, but technically he did, because they put him there and told you to go to this place so that you would have incentive to find more barrels from the cart, and you find this and you find that. So technically they are connected, but they're not telling you they're connected, right? If you're looking for fish, you're going to find the cart. If you're looking for the cart, you're going to find the fish. You're going to find the more barrels, all right? And so these things are separate, but they're meshed together. And when quests happen like that, they can be very, very engaging. Games like Assassin's Creed, let's take Assassin's Creed instead of Red Dead Redemption 2, because I feel like I'm bashing Red Dead Redemption 2 unnecessarily. Let's take Assassin's Creed, where you know, go here, do this. Go here, do this, go here, do this, go here, do this, find the feather, find the chicken, find the whatever. It's very, very linear all the time. Everything's very, very this path, this path, this path, this path. There's no deviating from the path. You can't do this, you can't do that. The open world is very boring, very expansive, and all the quests are very linear. Go find this guy, go and destroy this, go and burn this, go and kill this person. Nothing connects. All the side characters are really boring. No one really talks to one another. There's no interaction between side characters. Your base camp is basically a stagnant object. You know, the base camp in Assassin's Creed is a completely different topic, but like in AC3, when you were building your base camp, you kind of had more incentive to be there. In AC Valhalla, let's just say, it's just a place you visit and build things that never are actually interesting at all. I really hope this Assassin's Creed Shadows thing, where you build your base camp with this micro editor, is not just a gimmick. It feels a little bit gimmicky. But games like that force you to go here, force you to go there, it takes away from the freedom of the player. And that's a very important aspect to roleplay games and RPGs and big expansive games like Assassin's Creed or Red Dead Redemption and KCD2. And instead of following these tasks, I always kind of find myself trying to break some sort of system which allows me to do it quicker, or I can try and find something more interesting to do rather than collect, 50 different chicken eggs or 500 different feathers from every different. It's just boring, isn't it? It's just boring, mindless tasks that you have to do. Red Dead Redemption 2 doesn't really do this. You hunt for animals, but that's kind of the point. You are a hunter, aren't you? And it's actually interesting to track animals a little bit until it isn't. But I think if you find yourself in the place where you have to look at IGN's game guides on Google to try and complete things, if you're doing it all the time in Assassin's Creed all the time, you're kind of thinking, what am I playing the game for? Am I playing it because I want to complete it, or am I playing it because it's actually interesting to me? And what's the point of looking at my phone the whole time trying to figure out where the latest feather is or the latest thing is? And I'm trying to get immersed in the game. Every time you break that immersion and bring yourself out of the game by looking at a game guide because you can't figure out where the stupid feather is, you're breaking your relationship with the character, you're breaking a relationship. It's just completely the wrong direction that you want the player to be going in when you're building a game. And I think that's very Assassin's Creed, less so Red Dead Redemption 2 because it's really engaging. But KCD2, it doesn't require you to collect 50 feathers, at least not at the moment, right? I really hope I come to that, please. KCD2 tackles this problem by creating incentives for the player that don't actually appear on screen. For example, in this instance, I want to get better gear because I'm the basic boo, right? I can't do anything. I can't fight anybody. I have no money. And so I want to try and create circumstances for myself to gain things. And the game doesn't show me how to do that. It just gives me little hints here and there, and I follow those hints. So that's my incentive. All right, I'm sure there are other incentives later down the line as well, but this incentive right now for me is to find a sword, find a hat, I don't know, find anything, right? Find some cabbages, I don't know. And Assassin's Creed and RDR2, okay, they're completely different games to this. This is a very Skyrim similar game, very Bethesda similar game. Assassin's Creed Red Dead Redemption 2 have a different play style, and it's a play style that anyone can jump into. And that's what's interesting about those games, is that you don't really have to know everything, right, to be able to play. You can take tonics, you can eat, and it doesn't really affect you, right? You don't go hungry, you don't really go thirsty. It's not really a survival game, is it really? It's more of an experience. All food is in Red Dead Redemption 2, and Assassin's Creed doesn't even really have food at all. That's kind of how basic it is. But food in Red Dead Redemption 2 is very much to give you buffs rather than to feed you. In KCD2, if you don't have food, you die, okay? But Red Dead Redemption 2, you get buffs. Assassin's Creed, I don't think I've ever eaten anything at all that isn't going to give me a potion or... I mean, I don't remember even eating at all in... Yeah, that's weird, isn't it? It's more about assassinating what it used to be. Let's just leave that alone. But RDR2, let's just focus on RDR2 for a second, leave Assassin's Creed. Even RDR2 is very, very big, right? It's a massive game. Actually, it isn't in an interesting way because of how well designed it is and how scripted it is, but it's very, very subtly scripted. And it's supposed to be relatively relaxing. You drive the car, you do this, you do that, everything a cowboy would do. You interact with scripted enemies. It's very, very scripted all the time, and yet isn't obvious that it is. And then you can focus on those main story missions, and the separate missions that are outside the main story, the interactions that you have are very, very basic because it wants to draw you back into those story missions. That's perfectly fine. In fact, it does that so well that it's unnoticeable. And it holds your hand a lot, right? Red Dead Redemption 2, because it's leaning heavily into this idolized world of the cowboy, right? The Western cowboy, the outlaw role, and everything revolves around that. It revolves around your pistols, it revolves around your horse, it revolves around your character, it revolves around saloons, it revolves around carts and outlaws, and everything revolves around the cowboy experience. And I think when they were planning this game, they were thinking, never ever let something get in the way of that, because if it does, if your hunger gets in the way of you being a cowboy, if your thirst, then we're going to be drawing the player out of that experience, and that's not what they wanted to do. They wanted it to be real enough that you could play it without being impeded by other things. You can still go and get a bath, you can still go and get some food, but you're not going to die from hunger, are you, in Red Dead Redemption 2? You're not going to have a negative interaction from an NPC because you're dirty. There is an honor system, but it's very, very basic. It's nothing like KCD2, and that's okay, because Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't supposed to be focused on those things. It's all about Arthur. It's all about the way that you interact with Arthur and how Arthur changes over time, and you are really invested in his story, but you're not invested necessarily in your story. Yes, you can play a low honor Arthur, you can play a high honor Arthur, you can do different things, but those two linear paths are the only two linear paths that you're given, right? If you want to see just how scripted RDR2 is, this is not bashing it, this is why it's so good, right? Go and watch this series on screen right now. I've forgotten his name, YouTuber, but he does this amazing series where he tries to complete Red Dead Redemption 2 without killing anybody. And he finds that it's completely impossible. The whole thing is so scripted, but it's almost unbelievable, and yet you'd never notice if you were just playing casually. And isn't that just the way those kind of games should be played, right? It's so scripted, and yet it's so unobvious. Go and watch that series, it's fantastic. But KCD2, as I said, is the opposite, because everything you find outside the main quest, right? I'm sure in the main quest as well, I haven't done much of the main quest, but everything outside of the main quest allows the player to freedom to choose what to do, what not to do, what they can and can't do, and where and when they'll go to places, right? Your morality of your own self and your character you're invested in is the way that you play the game. Back to my storyline, because it starts to get really interesting from here. So as I'm searching for the barrels, I'm stumbling around, and I found some carrots and some cabbages and a few bottles of wine, really, basically. A few good potions I can sell. I'm trying to find the main path. Maybe I've missed something on the way down. When I stumble across this very suspicious pile of leaves, and I realise actually this is a fisherman's sort of hiding spot, isn't it? And inside is a sword. And this is the weapon that I knew was going to be here at some point, but I couldn't find. And it's across the river. It's technically not even part of this quest. It's part of the fisherman's hut or whatever, but it's still there, isn't it? I mean, I could find a starting sword from any location, but this is the one I found today. So if you're doing this side quest and want to complete it to the most possible way I can find to complete it, you've got to get the barrels from the cart side, you've got to search the cart, you've got to get those important cabbages. You got to wander around, you got to find the fisherman, or where the fisherman sends you. You can find the barrels there, find a few of the exotic spices, and then you can search the fisherman's tent and you can find the sword. So there we are, you've kind of got yourself a basic set of equipment and a really interesting costume. It's a Middle Eastern costume you can put on that increases your charisma, makes you more obvious because there's a pointy hat. But I think it's kind of a cool costume to have. I've never seen anyone else with it. I think it's kind of a cool outfit to wear, especially starting out as my sort of speech character I'm trying to create. Grabbing the sword and other items, I head towards this camp. I beat up this guy for some money. And then I decided to go for the main quest line. I decided to go and find my dog. It's on the other side of the pond I'd just come to. So I'm already there. I may as well go and do the main quest, find the dog, which is kind of the one of the starting quests. And the scenery is breathtaking. I'm wandering through this forest. It's down this like track. I don't think this is really a road, and people are waving to me, and I wave back at them, and they're quite friendly. Until I see some suspicious characters ahead on this crossroad. And I remember back in the prologue, people were saying to stay off the roads, the bandits are around everywhere. So I pop a Saviour's Snaps, and this is basically the potion that you take to save the game out of a save point, like a bed or whatever. And when I first started taking these, I wasn't really convinced. I soon would become convinced of these because of what was about to happen. But I wasn't convinced at the beginning because I thought, well, it seems a little bit scummy. I'm like save scumming here, aren't I, really? Just before a fight that I encounter. But I later realised that without these potions, the game would become very, very tiresome very, very quickly. And if I died here, having to go around the pond, find the crates, find the fishermen, it would just become a streamlined process, and I'd just I'd be skipping over everything I was doing to try to get back to this point. My whole storyline would kind of collapse on itself because I wouldn't really feel that I was doing anything. I'd do something and die immediately, have to all over again. And there are games like that, and a hardcore mode in this game is probably going to be a lot more like that for those players that want to do it. But for me, it's just, if I'm having to redo tasks I've done 3 times already that aren't combat related, right? It just makes me feel like my character development has kind of lost its steam a little bit. And eventually I end up going from point to point to point, ignoring everything. And that's not the point of the game. You're supposed to be immersed in this world. And if you're kind of going from point to point to point, you're missing everything. But you've got to find this balance, really, haven't you, in game creation? Because games are supposed to be frustrating because otherwise it'd be too easy, right? And it could be a good feeling to extend to the player that frustration exists. But in RPGs, there has to be a level of consideration towards a player, especially people like me who don't have a lot of time, who don't have time to min-max a character, who don't have time to play every single mission. Every time I boot up the game, I'm investing my time. It's not something I have to do, it's something I want to do. And if you are repaying me for my contribution with having to restart levels all the time because I'm not being able to do something, then it can get to the point where I'm not going to play the game anymore. And that's not something the developers wanted for you. And so you've got to balance player satisfaction with frustration and the game's difficulty, and it has to allow the player to want to come back again. KCD2 does this with as little out of reality implementation as possible. In fact, it's the wrong way of saying that, but you're taking a potion, you're sort of in game, you're not having to pause the game, go to a menu and save, right? You're not quick saving, you're taking a potion, a limited amount of potions. I think this is a great way of actually just allowing the player to still be immersed technically in the game, but also having a limited resource that they can use. And you have to make these potions, right, so you can save the game. And that makes the player interact with the fact that they have to choose when to save, not just save. And I'm okay with that now, as you're about to find out, because even though I am okay at combat games, I'm not great, to be honest with you. But at this point in the story, you haven't really had a proper fight yet with consequences, right? You've had fights that are scripted a little bit and you're supposed to win, but you haven't really had a fight with consequences where if you lose, you're gonna lose your stuff, and against a strong opponent, an opponent that can beat you. And I didn't play the first game originally, so I have no experience in combat. I've had the basic combat training. I haven't really had anything out on the road yet though. And first of all, I decided I'm not going to engage the bandits. I'm just going to wander past, and to no avail, I'll get killed. I realise there's 2 bandits that are weaker than the 3rd bandit, who's more of an armoured bandit, and I realise I have no chance of killing him, but I do have a chance of killing the 2 weaker ones. I realise that as I'm sneaking past, I draw off one of the bandits, one of the singular bandits, and I realise if I can draw one off and kill him, then I can at least get his loot. Hopefully that gives me some extra items to sell, maybe some better gear. So that was it then. I decided to draw one away, but every time the rest of them jump on me, and it seems like a hopeless endeavour to continue. I'm just too low of a level, I don't have any equipment really. However, I decided to give it one last try. If I can just get one of the bandits away from the rest of them, I can take something and run. But this time, something different happens, which I wasn't expecting. I retreat so far up the path that the bandits entangle themselves with another NPC, which happens to be a more powerful NPC, and this is a huntsman, and he has a bow and a short sword. And although he takes one of the lower bandits down, the heavily armoured bandit defeats him and takes him down. And so I decided to retreat further up the path, basically running away from these bandits, because I realised that if I could lose them and slip back around them before they could return to the crossroads, then I could loot this NPC, which has dropped hopefully a lot of good stuff. You look like a pretty decent character, so you might even have some good equipment I can sell or use again. So I decided to draw the bandits away, a circle around them, and try and loot these bodies before they can get back. I draw a wide circle around the area, and just as I'm sure the bandits are nowhere to be seen, the rabbit pops up on my screen again. The rabbit is an indication of what stance you're in, technically what the NPCs are doing, whether they're searching for you, whether they're alerted by you, whether they're fighting you. And I think, how on earth have they seen me? After I've slipped around them all, I've taken considerable time to do this. I've been in the river, I've been up the trees, I've been everywhere. No way they could follow me down here. It wouldn't make sense. And it in fact didn't make sense, because it wasn't the bandits that had found the bodies, right? It was the patrol. And even though I'd been attacked by the bandits, I hadn't killed anybody that wasn't a bandit. If the guards saw me covered in blood, with maybe some stolen goods in my bag, I'd most likely be arrested, if not engaged in some sort of combat. I knew that at least the huntsman's clothing would be valuable enough to me. And so after some sneaking in the shadows, I managed to loot the body of the huntsman. And his clothing was indeed of significant value and worth, far better than mine. However, I was now feeling a little overconfident. I had a good sword as well, a long sword, and I thought, oh, this is fantastic. I was feeling a little overconfident though. And I decided I needed to get the other bandit's body before the guards looted everything. But one guard, he just wouldn't turn away. And I should have waited, but I got impatient. And let's just say, I really should have waited. And he took me down pretty easily. So, was all that for nothing? No. It was actually just the beginning of what was going to become a really interesting set of events. I decided I needed to get to those bodies before the guards patrol did. And the only way to do that was to attack my pursuers. And I realised that one of them was slower than the other because of his armour. Right, and stamina is really important in this game, and you can outrun enemies that are slower than you. And I figured that at least where I was now, hiding in the bushes, my enemies are probably searching, or probably separately searching. So I backtracked on myself, and sure enough, I encountered my first proper sword fight, you could say. It's nothing compared to what I'm about to face. It took me a while to get a hang of it, to be honest with you. I've done this before, so KCD2's combat is unforgiving. And you really have to watch your stamina bar and watch those parries and watch the direction of attack. And it's all very, very intuitive. But that's it, you get it eventually. And let's just call it a few attempts. But I managed to kill the bandits. And the road is now open for me to loot the bodies, right? And I loot the bandit's body, and there's a few good things on it. Except it isn't, because I stumbled straight into the armoured guard like an idiot, because I forgot he was there. And I don't really survive that long. So it confirms to me that I can kill one and I have to avoid the other. And I repeat this process until I eventually somehow manage to get past the armored bandit before he sees me. I'm not sure where he is. I think he goes into the trees and does like a weird loop around rather than going up the path. I'm not really sure why. After looking at the body that I come across, the huntsman's body, I realised that the longsword, which I'd found previously, was just not there. And even after a search of the whole area, I just look around in this grass for ages, trying to find this longsword. Just can't find it, it's just not there. And with growing frustration, I somehow trigger the armoured guard from wherever he was hiding or peeing, whatever he was doing. And I have to start the whole thing over again. I'm an idiot. Looking back on the replay now, and I was doing a bit of research as I was, just making sure I got the story correct. As I'm looking through my replay, I realised that I've been an idiot. Again, what's funny is that in the heat of a moment, during the scene where I'm, trying to avoid these guards and loot the body, I accidentally loot a completely different body. And a more keenly sighted of you would have noticed this before. I think I'm looting the huntsman because that's the person that has died, right? And it doesn't make a connection to me that someone else might have died on the road. It's actually a noble, and this guy has a long sword. And the huntsman does not have a long sword. So I'm looking for an object that now doesn't exist because the guards must have arrived and this guy must have already been dead, or something happened. NPC interactions can happen off camera to me in the same scenario. That's really quite incredible. In a strange sort of way, I'm actually enjoying the fact that I'm confused. It makes the game and the characters so much more relatable. Like, I would actually be confused and be terrified in a situation like that. And my confusion makes me draw a bad conclusion, right? That's not scripted. I'm sorry, that's not even meant to happen. They're trying to show you this is not the correct body. Because I'm such a noob player, I'm completely new to this, I make the wrong call. And because of that, other things happen that wouldn't have happened if I had made the correct call. You can call me stupid for misidentifying the body, and it's a stupid mistake. But the thing is, because of the tenant situation, I didn't read the name correctly, and I put two and two together just now. And I don't realise this until the edit, so this is kind of astounding for me right now. But it's during one of these attempts So I'm trying to find this longsword. I'm saying, must find my longsword. I mean, where is it? It's ridiculous. I can't find it. It's a huge longsword. I'm thinking, the guard must have taken it because he must have looted the body and sold a longsword. That makes some sort of sense. But I'm just about to give up hope. There's no way I'm going to kill this guard, so I'm just going to leave. I've got some decent clothing. I've got some decent potions and money. I'm doing good. I'm just pretty good. And as I'm moving this body to the side of the road to try and not draw attention to it, I realise there's something in the grass. I think, it's a longsword, it's a longsword, it's a longsword. And it's not a longsword, it's a bow. And it's obvious now, the huntsman would have dropped a bow. In fact, you can actually see him during the combat scene. He uses the bow and a short sword. He doesn't use a longsword. The fact that he had arrows in his bag and not a bow, and I'm just thinking, why on earth didn't you think that there's a bow? Literally looks like Robin Hood, alright? Why on earth would you not think there must be a bow here somewhere? Anyway, I found the bow, and it's just crazy to think just how many connections have led up to this point. Let's take it right back. If I hadn't been suspicious of the car not being what it claimed to be, and that there wasn't more stuff, I wouldn't have found the fisherman, who wouldn't have told me about the fishing point, which wouldn't have given me the incentive to search the area, which wouldn't have led me to finding more equipment, including new clothes, which are kind of cool, and a sword that I used to fight the bandits off initially. Bandits who wouldn't have killed the huntsman, who wouldn't have been misidentified by me, an idiot, if I hadn't taken a roundabout route to try and get around the bandits, who then wouldn't have dropped the bow, a weapon which now allows me to potentially, I'm thinking in my mind, kill the armoured enemy. And so I pop another save use snaps, and after equipping all the huntsman's gear I can find to increase my accuracy or whatever, I go out and search for the armoured guard. And it takes me a couple of attempts to master the bow, but I'm not practiced enough yet to get a long shot and a second shot. I decide to shoot him and get the shot in, right? And then kite him and hopefully wear him out, and then take another shot, and then kite him and take another shot. However, things don't seem to be going so well until a chance glance allows me to see a horseman coming along the track, and it's the noble from before. Right? The guy who died before is back again. This is the guy who must have come along and found the bandits before, then the guards found him and everything like that. And he has a giant longsword. And so surely now, the both of us can put this guy down. The noble guy, he wasn't armoured very well. But I've still got a chance to kill this armor guard, and I fail. Frustration. But the frustration drives me on. I can now see the possibility of a light at the end of the tunnel. I shoot the bandit. The bandit is chasing me, and now is when I need to see that noble guy. Hoping this time I can actually put a shot into the bandit rather than being completely useless. But it's this point that the bandit's luck really runs out, because instead of a finely clad noble riding down the hill, this time it's a heavily armoured mercenary. And this guy, he's a beast. So he takes out this bandit guard with one swing of his mace, and suddenly, for the first time in about half an hour, I've been left alone. There are no other NPCs, there's no huntsmen, there's no villagers, there's no bandits. 4 dead bodies to loot, including this guy, the guy that I was so unable to kill before. But because the game is so interconnected, I finally managed to defeat him with the most basic gear. I am so happy because I get basically a full armor set out of this, even though I was not supposed to at all. Supposed to? I can do whatever I want. Oh my gosh. So I've got a leg up in the game now. It's a fantastic feeling, isn't it? That whole hour of gameplay was worth it. I can now take on heavier bandits. I'm now feeling much more capable as a player. You do things, you invest time, you invest resources to become more capable. When the game rewards you for it because of your own intuition, it's so much more rewarding than just being handed an XP boost or being handed a new weapon or being handed this. It's an entirely organic gameplay experience, one that so impressed me that I had to share it with you. And it's worth the $60 that it costs. And this is not sponsored in any way, shape or form. I've not been invited by Warhorse. I don't have any sponsor codes. I don't get paid for this at all. And I've left this part until the end of the video, so those of you that are still invested in this video are the only ones to see this, because I don't want to be like, oh, go and buy this game because it's so great, and then, it's a little bit scummy, doesn't it? I've left it until the end of the 5% that's still watching. If you are really interested in this level of immersion, go and buy the game. Seriously, it's worth the $60. This game has minimal bugs, plays extremely well. The UI is fantastic, it isn't annoying, the gameplay isn't repetitive. It's something truly special. And in my opinion, it is the best RPG game since Red Dead Redemption 2. I hope you've enjoyed this small, brief, relatively early on gameplay of KCD2, but I hope it explains to you interconnectivity between different tasks and how you can build your own story. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. It really helps me out and helps me keep going. And I really appreciate every single comment that you guys leave. And I hope to see you next time. Take care.